Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state. It is tragic that we have allowed ourselves to sink this low. But there we are. We are a failed state. What makes it worse is we don't even have the courage to admit we have failed. This article is about from the World Bank saying 7.9 million Zimbabweans are living in extreme poverty. What makes it interesting is there are many out there who prefer to accept what the regime says. And the regime insists that Zimbabwe is on course to become an upper middle income nation by 2030. This is the so-called Vision 2030. This marks the real problem we have in Zimbabwe. How some people refuse to accept facts, reality, the truth. Even when it is there in front of them, a mountain of evidence that things are not going on well, they'll still disregard it and believe what they are told. It's a fundamental weakness. In his book, Animal Farm, George Orwell captured the essence of that problem. In the book, George Orwell writes of the mentality of various animals. And the one animal that encapsulates our problem here in Zimbabwe is Boxer. Boxer is the horse. He had problems understanding or learning the alphabet. It took him as long to learn the first 4 letters of the alphabet as other animals took to learn the whole alphabet. When he went on to the next 4, it took him just as long again. And by then, it was realized that he had forgotten the first 4. That is the problem that Boxer had. Inability to understand. He could not string thoughts together in a rational way. In the book, George Orwell writes of one situation, and I quote, "In spite of the shock that Snowball expulsion had given them, the animals were dismayed by this announcement, the cancellation of the public meetings and discussions. Several of them would have protested if they could find the right arguments. Even Boxer was vaguely troubled. He tried hard to marshal his thoughts, but in the end, he could not think of anything to say. That encapsulates the problem we have in Zimbabwe. We have citizens who really cannot marshal their thoughts together and think of something rational to say. Man is supposed to be a creature of reason, but clearly not all of us are capable of it. That is our problem. We can see that Zimbabwe's infrastructure is in varying stages of decay and rot. So how can anyone still believe in this vision 2030 when the evidence on the ground is saying something else? But when you cannot comprehend the truth, the reality, and you've got to rely on whatever the leaders say, you're in trouble. In the book Animal Farm, Boxer, one of his mottos was, Comrade Napoleon is always right. This is no different from what we see in Zimbabwe. Whatever the leadership say, they are right. There's no difference between Zanu PF supporters and MDC-CCC supporters. Comrade Napoleon is always right. The more modern version of that is Chamisa Chete Chete. You can't reason with somebody like that. Zanu PF blatantly rigged last year's elections, just as they've rigged elections in the past. It's amazing how the regime has got away with it again and again and again. Here is Mnangagwa insisting that the elections were free, fair, and credible.
Vana vakatuka Zanu PF kana ini ndonyanyisa kufara kuita zvakanaka. Ukavona vavengi vako vachikurumbidza unenge uchikanganisa. Ukavona vachiti Zanu PF yakaipa, farai. You are doing correct things for your country. Hongu takaita maelections edu kuna vamwe vaitaura zvisina musoro zvikanzi maelections anafamba zvakanaka ndezvavo.
Well, the elections were rigged, and all of us have suffered the consequences of it. We, the people of Zimbabwe, are the ones who should have stood up and said, no, these elections were not right. Let's get them right. Let's do something about it. Zanu PF has been rigging elections for the last 44 years. That's why Zimbabwe is a failed state. The last 24, Zanu PF has rigged elections with the active connivance of MDC-CCC. They have had the opportunity to implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, but they've chosen to do nothing about it. That is the reason why we are in this mess. Chamisa and company have lied about winning elections. They're the ones who have talked their supporters into participating in flawed elections under the pretext that they would win the elections. Last year, Chamisa told his supporters that CCC will win big because he had plugged all the vote-banking loopholes. Of course, he was lying. Zanu PF went on to blatantly rig those elections. And what is disappointing is that the 2 million or so Chamisa Chete supporters who participated in those flawed elections, even to this day, do not want to accept that Chamisa lied. That is the problem with the mentality of the people we are dealing with here. They cannot see the facts on the ground, the reality on the ground. They believe anything that Chamisa tells them. Democracy does not work that way. We need people who look at things objectively, evaluate them for what they are. Here is BBC exposing, taking Chamisa to task on his lying.
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza naye akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election, $15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Kasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
The truth is, if we want Zimbabwe to get out of this mess, we really have to have a totally different mentality. This brainwashed mentality of thinking that everything is okay, and we refuse to see the reality, is at the heart of why Zimbabwe is a failed state. We cannot believe that Vision 2030 is a reality when all the evidence shows that it is not. The World Bank is saying that nearly half the population of the country are living in poverty. We know, we can see the infrastructures, the roads, the hospitals, you name it. They are all in varying stages of decay. That is the reality. We have got to acknowledge the reality and deal with it. Let me say it again. The MDC CCC were elected. Their primary purpose was to implement democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. After 24 years, they failed to implement even one token reform. The number one task before the nation then is to get an opposition, a competent opposition that will implement the reforms. We cannot keep on going the way we are. At the present moment, it is clear that 2028, Zanu PF will rig those elections. It is also equally clear that Chamisa and company are not going to get even one token reform implemented. So what is the way forward? Well, the way forward is, while we cannot stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, we can stop Zanu PF getting away with it. If Zimbabweans do not participate in these flawed elections in their millions, as happened last year, SADC will deny Zanu PF political legitimacy. That is the reality. That is the way forward. How can we keep on participating in a flawed process, giving it legitimacy? It doesn't make any sense. We are our own worst enemies. I never thought we would reach the point where we think like the animals in Animal Farm. One of the most famous quotations, as far as I'm concerned, is thanks to the leadership of Comrade Napoleon, how excellent this water tastes. That is the pinnacle of a totally brainwashed people. We keep on participating in flawed elections, knowing fully well that they're flawed, knowing fully well that by participating we are giving Zanu PF legitimacy. But we participate because an upstart like Chamisa cons us into believing that we can win rigged elections. How many more years do we have to keep on participating in these flawed elections before the penny finally drops that we cannot win rigged elections, where Zanu PF has got carte blanche powers to do as the damn well please? The rules to ensure elections are free, fair, and credible are important. Zanu PF, we should not allow them to just brush them aside and do as they please. Nor should we allow ourselves to be conned into believing we can win rigged elections by an upstart who is only saying it because he's after the few gravy train seats that he knows Zanu PF will reward those who participate in the flawed elections. We must start thinking for ourselves. The biggest problem that we have in Zimbabwe today is that people stopped thinking for themselves. They just follow blindly what the leaders tell them. Hero worshipping leaders to the point of being totally blind to the reality. 44 years of rigged elections, 24 of which Zanu PF has done it with the connivance of MDC. We should open our eyes and see the reality for ourselves. No one is going to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. We must do it ourselves. If we can't stop them, we should make sure that we deny them legitimacy. For God's sake, let's do it. Thank you.